We will serve the Lord. That's what the Ratliffs stand for. This is my family. This is my brother. His name is Emanuele Christian Ratliff, but we call him Manny. He's a little different by some people's standards, as he was born with a syndrome called Asperger syndrome on the autism spectrum. He's now 24 years old and living a really great life. He attended most of college, is planning on going back soon, and currently working as a paraprofessional in our local middle school. He's single, straight, and I'm really excited to see what he does in the future. You see, Manny is one of my best friends. We have a really close relationship. I look up to him so much. Though so many people have looked down on him his whole life, he's always accomplished whatever he set his mind to. He sings beautifully. He also has a passion and a great talent for performance. He reads all the time, is crazy smart, and just has a love of life and other people. He knows probably every historical tidbit you can think of, especially when it comes to Knights of the Round Table. My brother is an incredible person, an integral part of how our family works the way it does. Him and my father have a great connection, a great bond. Through music and theater, they've always really understood each other in a really special way. Which leads me to my dad. This is Don Wesley Ratliff, my father. He's 50 years old, married to my mom for 29 years, and just a really awesome guy. He currently works as a band director in grades 6 through 12, and also is a pastor in one of our local communities. He's strong, compassionate, and just such a hard worker. I really learned the value of hard work from my father. If it weren't for him, our family would not function the way it does. When it comes to feelings and emotions, my dad is always the best one to toe the line and be the mediator in the house. We really appreciate him and all that he does for us and our family. And he is married to the rock of the household, the foundation for which we would all fall without. My mother, Margaret May Willoughby Ratliff. She's 49 years old, the eldest of 8 children, and just the most compassionate and kind person I've ever met. My mom works as a choir director in a local high school alongside my dad. They like to say that the music department is actually the Ratliffs, as she teaches 6 through 12 choir and my dad teaching 6 through 12 band. She's just a really incredible person. My mom is hard to explain. She has this incredible balance of strength and compassion, quiet and mediation. She's someone I really aspire to be with. She's been married to my dad for about 29 years. Actually, about to be 30 on the 16th of December, which we're really excited for them about. My mom came from a very broken household. There was a lot of abuse, substance abuse, divorce, a lot of things in her past that could have really influenced her future. And there were times and in ways it really did. But my mom is the strength of our family and has done so much to make sure that the cycle of poverty and abuse has not continued. I appreciate so much what my mom does. She has a great understanding of mental health and a great way of allowing people to share their feelings and thoughts without feeling judged or pressured. Without her, our family would not work the way it does. She's an integral part of our house, as are the other two. My mom also has a really great connection with my brother. You see, my dad has a great connection with him, but it had to be learned. My dad is really the definition of a guy's guy, right? He grew up, he was in football, he wrestled, varsity athlete. He did music as well, but his connection with his father was mostly based on strength and all of those aspects of manliness that society tells us are true. My brother is much more sensitive. He enjoyed speech and drama, music, the arts, and my dad had to learn and adjust to be a part of that. My brother and my mom have always had a great connection. Their love of music is incredible. They both write so well. They have an incredible ability to lace sentences and words together to create beautiful stories. They have a very special relationship, and it has continued throughout their entire time together. My father and my mother have a really great marriage. It's something that I have always aspired to. They got married really young, at ages 20 to 22. And though it took them a while to finally have kids, they thought that they were going to have to go through the process of adoption. Our tight-knit family of 4 is very strong, which leads me to me and my process and my placement in our house. I'm Charity Elizabeth Ratliff. I'm 22 years old and in my 4th year of college, but functionally, I'm a junior here at Baylor, as I really felt led and called to change my major to social work, leaving me here an extra year, which most people would think I'm upset about, but I'm really not. Waco and Texas, Baylor, college, these have all been things that have transformed my life in a great way. I was one of those people who really needed to get out of my little small town and see what the world had to offer. Waco has been a great place to find out who I am. So, who am I? Well, I wouldn't be the person I am today without my family. I was born as a child with early onset bipolar, my brother being on an Asperger's and the autism spectrum, and then my dad learning to balance all of these different things as my mom also struggles with mental health. That really created an interesting dynamic in our home, especially us just being a family of 4. But I think one of the things that really shaped me and who I am as a person was the fact that I'm the functional oldest. Though my brother is older, really growing up, it was like I was the older sibling. There were a lot of aspects of life where I tried to normalize Manny. I just wanted him to be normal, to act normal, even though I didn't realize that normal, in all honesty, is only a setting on a dryer, right? But growing up, I didn't have that same opinion. I really thought that I could change him and make him like the normal older brother. So for my whole life, I've had that functional oldest position. Once we got to college was when it really shifted. My brother more took on the role of protector and, being that kind of dorky protector of older brother whenever I might talk about boys or going out on a weekend or something like that. But we have a crazy strong bond. Me, I'm a pretty fun-loving person, outgoing. I used to be shy, which nobody would believe. But I absolutely love coffee and hanging out with my friends. Those are all things that are really important to me. And so is my family. I tell people when I give tours of Baylor that my family lives about 1,700 miles away, but I've really had a home here at Baylor, which is definitely true. Not only has my physical family shaped me and changed me, so has the family I've created being here at Baylor. However, I wouldn't have been able to create that family had it not been for these people who helped raise me. My mom, my dad, my brother, and I. We're a small unit of 4, but we're very strong. Here's a look more in depth on how we became us. So I've given you a brief overview of what my family is like. The big things in our lives that have really shaped us and our ability to cope with one another. But a huge part of that has been our spirituality and our love of Jesus here in my family. One of those things was the fact that we loved Jesus and we followed what the Bible said. No matter if that was cool, uncool, good or bad, sometimes it didn't make my upbringing the most fun because we had very strong and strict boundaries and very strong and strict rules in my house. First of all, mom and dad are heads of the household. That is non-disputable. That is non-negotiable. Mom and dad are in charge. The thing is, mom and dad are in charge equally. However, there were times in my life when my mom submitted to the traditional, or as we like to call it, role of wife and allowed my dad to make the final call. She felt that that was her duty and her calling as a woman of God, especially being married to a pastor. But that being said, there was always something in me that really wanted to rebel. I wasn't the most rule-following of children, which is interesting because I would definitely consider myself a rule follower now, probably because of all the strict boundaries I had growing up. So again, those boundaries of mom and dad were very strong. We had very strong boundaries of appropriateness in the house. You didn't talk about sex, intercourse, different things along those lines in mixed company. We didn't talk about alcohol. We didn't talk about mental illness outside of our family. Those are just really important things to us. And though I appreciate the fact that they shaped my childhood, there are aspects of them that going into the role of future wife and mother, I may change in the future. Another strong boundary in our house was that of our extended family. Like I said, my mom comes from a really rough background. And though we love them all, they're sometimes hard individuals to be around. They don't love Jesus, and there is a lot of brokenness there that have really shaped the lives of all of those involved. So growing up, that was just a boundary we had to accept. We only went to Nana and Papa's house for a few hours. sometimes only a day, and there were certain things we weren't allowed to do. My Nana Pat, though sober now, struggled with substance abuse for many, many years. So growing up, we weren't allowed to ever get in a vehicle with Nana Pat, which made it hard because I have a lot of cousins, and all of the cousins were always allowed to go out on the four-wheeler with Nana Pat, but that just wasn't something that my parents were okay with. Those strict boundaries sometimes made life a little less fun. And it also was hard because we felt like the other grandchildren at times. My brother and I, though the two oldest, as my mom, the oldest of 8, really wanted to have a close connection with our grandparents. There was a time and a way where it just wasn't possible. Nana Pat was struggling with abuse. There were many divorces, a lot of brokenness, a lot of continued hurt feelings. And so it was just really hard to come together all the time. We just really had to make that boundary not to. And then, as a child, one of the big things that shaped us was the fact that 3 of my uncles were deployed in Iraq after 9/11 at the same time. I still remember it to this day. 9/11 happened, and about 2 weeks later, all 3 of them were called up. It was very hard. And it was one of those times when the boundaries loosened a little bit. We spent a little more time with that side of the family and our grandparents. Though the rules that we had before were still very strict and laid out, the boundaries loosened just a little. I saw that a couple more times growing up. For the most part, boundaries and rules, if they were set, they were non-negotiable. But the older I got, the more responsible I got, the more the reins loosened just a little bit, which I really value, especially when my older brother went off to college. I had no idea how to be an only child when my older brother went off to college because he was my best friend. He was the guy I spent all of my time with after school, and really in school too, as I didn't have that many friends in high school, more just people that I hung around. So we were really close. It was really hard on me when he went off to college. But when he went off to college, a lot of the really strict rules just kind of left. So I didn't have as strict of a curfew at night. As long as my parents knew where I was, they were okay. The dating rules had extended a lot. Before, I was supposed to get permission for any date or anyone who asked me out. Now, if someone asked me out and I wanted to go, I didn't have to ask. I could just tell them, this person asked me out and I would like to go. Not that it happened a lot, but it was cool that the boundary had gotten loosened. Other rules in our house, some were interesting growing up. Wasn't allowed to watch Harry Potter, Scooby-Doo, some of those things. Looking back, maybe they weren't necessary, but it really shaped my livelihood and my understanding of what rules were. Kind of led me to be the rule-following individual I am today. So I've talked a little bit about my family system, my subsystems, the boundaries that take place, some of the rules, and a little bit of the roles of my family. So, with all of these different elements, how have we found homeostasis? There have been times when it's been really hard, as we're all very highly strung, highly emotional people, so finding that comfortable level of tension has not always been easy. However, something that we learned is that we don't do distance in our family. So when there's a problem, we deal with it quickly. Thus, the balance in our family has been maintained through our ability to seek out one another for counsel and support. That's really helped us. Times when our family has felt unstable or out of control have normally been in those moments when we haven't come to one another with problems. Oftentimes, when we saw the most unbalance in our or lack of homeostasis in our family were times growing up when we suffered with financial burdens, which sometimes felt like a lot, as my parents had a lot of medical bills after my brother was premature in 1993 before a lot of those resources existed. So normally there was just this kind of power divide of my parents wanting to share what's going on with us, but not knowing what they should due to, the financial restrictions and boundaries that are there between parent and child. So as I've said before, everyone in my family kind of has their own role, their own position that they take. My dad, the mediator, my mom, the counselor and caregiver, me, probably the one causing the most trouble. But in all honesty, I can be the voice of reason. and then my brother, who's there to give factual evidence to all things involved. Everyone has their own role and their own skills. But breaking it down, my father is definitely the head of the household. He's the one in charge. He's the one who makes sure that everything runs smoothly and well. My mom is the one who makes sure that all of us are cared for, that our feelings are cared for, that our problems and situations are known and fixed. She's really just that helper personality, similar to just social workers in general. I think that's where I got a lot of my desire to help people from, was seeing her selflessness growing up. My older brother is the one always trying to keep the peace. Even when we have little squabbles or we're joking around, it's his goal to make sure that everyone is getting along at all times. I'm kind of the fun monitor. I really want us to enjoy each other's time and each other's company. That's really my goal in the house. But when it comes to making decisions and those types of roles, for the most part, my mom and dad do that together, unless it's a big, major family decision. So when we decided to move to Hardin from Sydney when I was in 6th grade, my parents brought us into that. They wanted us to know how that would impact us. But the authority of the family definitely goes to my dad. Not in an authoritative or dictative way, but rather in a way where he really values that role and wants to lead the family in the best and most biblical way that he can. This is definitely a transitional time in my family's life, as my parents are in the early stages of their launching center, or launching children and moving on, as my brother has now gone off to college and I've gone off to college. The only difference is there's an interesting dynamic, and the dynamic has changed, as the last year my older brother went back to move in with our parents to save money while he worked to pay off student loans and such. So they're almost back to this teenage type stage with my brother working and living there, but it's hard to balance the ability of being an adult and living with your adult parents. So there's a lot to learn. Doing some research on this, I learned more about the social learning theory within the family development model. It's that movement to movement exchange and the crucial times a child receives feedback or immediate reward for their behaviors. I think that that's shaped a lot of how Manny and I grew up, and probably is impacting the way that they're interacting now. My parents were very hands-on when it came to discipline and correction growing up. If you did something right, you were rewarded. If you didn't, you were punished. It was that reciprocal traps idea that we all knew our tasks and we knew what we were supposed to do. And if you didn't do what you were supposed to do, there were consequences for that. However, how do you reconcile that as an adult living with your family? The current unemployment rate for college graduates is still about 12%. And in that, there are more people and more college-age students moving in with their family than ever before. There is some research being done that this is possibly prolonging adolescence, and it's moving the roles of the family in a retrograde motion. I'm not sure if I agree with that, but the studies done were really interesting. I think that it's something that my family definitely has to work through, learning what it's like to be an adult living with adults. Because now our family is more in the partnership role given by the Garland phases. We work to meet each other's needs. We want to negotiate those boundaries. And I think that's something we're really having to learn how to do right now. And a transition that most families go through is we have less of a child-parent role and more of a partner or friendship role. And learning how to go forth in that is very important. Other Garland phases that my family have gone through is definitely transformation, especially my senior year of high school when my grandfather died. It was really hard and a very stressful time for our family, as he did not have a will and he had 5 children. So there were elements where that became very difficult because there was a lot of unknowns going on. And that definitely changed the family dynamic, especially on my mom's side of the family. In addition, my mom's side of the family is a blended family. There's a lot of divorce and remarriage, so just kind of figuring out how to reconcile that has been a huge part of transformation really my whole life, but especially throughout the past few years. I feel as though my parents are currently going through the consolidation phase, as they are going through the process of figuring out caregiving for their own parents, and especially the fact that my mom's father passed away and he was married to her stepmom, and learning how to have a relationship with her stepmom, even though she's no longer married to my grandfather. So my parents are definitely going through the idea and the struggles of figuring out how to work with their own parents and that new caregiving role, and the idea that they now have to get plans in place for what may happen in the future. So I hope that you've learned and experienced how much my family loves for one another, cares for one another, and enjoys spending time with one another. And because we enjoy spending time with one another so much, we really value our own personal traditions that we have. A lot of the traditions that we have were just things that we came up with. Maybe one or two that have been passed down throughout the years. But for the most part, our little family of four has really created their own special unit and their special bond with one another. So some of our traditions, one of my most favorite, is the fact that growing up on Friday nights, we always had family night, either before or after getting to spend time with other people or the Friday night football game. But we always got together at the kitchen table and played Rummy. It's a card game. We still do that. We have hours and hours, and the running total is officially too much to count, so at some point we should really restart how many points we have. But that's just a really special thing that we do in a way that we've always bonded together. When it comes to traditions of holidays and whatnot, something that we've done my whole life is always open presents on Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day is designated for stockings. Christmas Eve, we also always have a Thanksgiving meal of lasagna. It started when my dad was in high school and they housed a foreign exchange student and wanted to make him feel welcome during the holidays. And it's just been something that we've done my entire life. Every year we have lasagna in the evening, and then we go and open presents, always from youngest to oldest. Growing up, I thought that was the coolest thing ever, because for about 13 years, I was the youngest in my family. But then my Uncle Ronnie finally had kids, and so now I'm no longer the youngest. Not necessarily a tradition, but another little fun fact about my family is the fact that my dad is 13 years older than my uncle. My uncle is 13 years older than my older brother, and I am 13 years older than my uncle's oldest child. Definitely not planned, but it just so happened to work out that way for all of those involved. So that's just a special thing that we talk about. Oh, and my cousin Timothy was born on October 13th, and my youngest cousin Sean was born in the year 2013. So again, 13 just must be a special number for our family. But going back to food, we love cooking. It's funny because my dad is actually the primary cooker in our family, but getting together for a meal, and especially being a pastoral home, people come to our house for meals all the time, and that's just something that's really special to us. My favorite meal, and probably the most traditional meal in our family, is definitely my dad's baby back pork ribs and rice. He has this really incredible barbecue sauce that he makes. It's just the bomb. And then he makes the most incredible biscuits and gravy from scratch. They are so good. They're my favorite meal. So those two things are always things that I ask for whenever I go home. And going home is really important and really special to us, as I did choose to go to a university about 1,700 miles away. Whenever I go home, we really value that time. And a reason for that is because we are a very spiritual family. Our beliefs are very important to us, and it has shaped my whole life. In all honesty, it's a gift from God that I got the family I did. Had I not, with all the struggles that I've gone through, especially my issues with mental health, I don't know, honestly, if I could be here speaking to you today. It's a huge part of my belief in God that He placed me in the family that He did. So spirituality is very important. We believe in the Bible, we believe in what the Bible tells us, and that's how we shape our lives. That's how we decide to live our lives. It's something that's always been an integral part of our family. Some fun things that have been passed down my whole life is the fact that my mom's side of this family especially is very Norwegian. We have very strong Norwegian roots, as my mom's grandparents actually traveled on the boat from Norway to here. So Norwegian food is a huge part, and just Montana, North Dakota in general is very Scandinavian in nature, so you find that in a lot of different places. But growing up, my Nana Pat would always make a huge Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner. Very traditional turkey, ham, meatballs with white sauce. That's kind of a Scandinavian thing. And then she would make something called kumkakas. Kumkakas are the most incredible Norwegian cookie ever. You can fill it with ice cream or pudding or anything really, and they're just really, really good. So those Norwegian roots were really important. Something that I actually always kind of was bummed out about myself with was that I never learned the language, because that side of the family, many people did speak it, especially my grandparents. So it's interesting to hear how those roots of really having immigrants and only being third generation on that side living in America has been a really strong part of why that side of my family, who are predominantly farmers and ranchers, really hold true to that value of hard work and even laborious work being the best work you can do. One of my favorite traditional stories is from my dad's side of the family about how we got the name Ratliff. We like to say that we're named Ratliff, originally Redcliffe, after the Red Cliffs in Europe. And we traveled to America, and when we traveled to the Americas, we became Ratcliffe rather than Red Cliffs. So we were in America. Our names were Ratcliffe, and there were 7 brothers. The 7 brothers each had wives, and when the father of the family of 7 passed away, there was an argument about land and who got what land because of the brides that some of the young men had, and they weren't considered desirable to all of the brothers. So there was a big dispute, and 4 of the brothers kept the name Ratcliffe, and 3 of the brothers dropped the C and became Ratliff. It's gone through a lot of different stages. There's been an E at the end, there's been a D in my last name, but that's the general story, or like they like to tell us is the story. In all honesty, I've never heard anything to back that up historically, genealogy-wise, so I really think that it's something that my grandfather made up to entertain us, but it's one of my favorite family stories and family traditions that I definitely plan on passing down in the future as well. So that's my family. We use feedback to communicate. We really enjoy our traditions and our household fun things that we do. We're really tight. We have a very strong bond, and we're going through a lot of different transitions, living life in a different way currently. But my family is awesome, and I'm so blessed to have the people that I do. This is us. We are the Ratliffs.